Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur for the past 10 years. I started when I was about 20, 21 years old. I'm 31 this year, and it's been a pretty eventful journey. So I just give you a, just quick snapshot of, things I've kind of done. So I've sold two companies, one to Groupon. So I started an e-commerce, company in Malaysia, and we're, focused on growing it in Southeast Asia. And, after about 6 months, Groupon came our way and, they bought our company. The second company that we exited as well was $20 million merger with it's a digital media company, mainly focused on like social media advertising, currently I'm heading up the Groupon business for Asia Pacific. So we're in 12 countries, namely Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, and India, and so I'm super passionate about entrepreneurship. Invest in startups. Invest in two startups in Hong Kong recently. One in the health tech space and the other in kind of online retail. So so I think over the next 15 minutes, I thought I just wanted to share with you a little bit of what I've learned in the past 10 years as an entrepreneur, right? And actually started. My first learning actually wasn't when I was actually when I was 15 years old, right? So I was kind of this height when I was 15. How many of you guys here play basketball? Like, can I see a raise of hands? Okay. How many of you guys know Steven Adams? All right, great. Yeah, I heard he's really well paid, right? Like $3 million a year or something, like more than any of the rugby players. So so Steven Adams plays for Oklahoma, right? And he mostly sits on the bench, I heard, right? For now. Oh no. I've not watched it. But that's what Adam told me, Boo, right? So, when I was growing up, I was 15 years old, I was tall, but I wasn't very good at basketball, okay? So I was a bench warmer, right? And, somehow I was playing for, it was the qualifying for school to go into the state competition, right? And, I was part of the school team because I just want to skip class, right? It's a good time to go and practice basketball of the evenings, when there's class and, I could kind of meet friends and hang out. So what happened was that in the qualifiers, right, we progressed pretty well, and it was the final match before, it was to determine whether our school was going to go into the state competition or it was another school, right? And it was in the fourth quarter, right, and we were leading by 5 points, right? And I haven't touched the ball in a single match in the past 1-2 weeks of the qualifiers. So just sitting there, just chilling, kind of like I was sitting here, right? And the coach was here, and he was, we had 2 minutes left on the clock. Then what happened was that our best player got injured, right? And he had to be stretchered out. So then the coach was like really worried, right? So there was 2 minutes left. We were leading by, we were actually leading by 3 points, right? And it's pretty good lead, right? 3 points, 2 minutes left. And the coach looked at the bench, right? And there was like 4 people on the bench, and I was like the furthest, right? So I thought, okay, no problem, right? Coach walks 1 step and then looked at the guy, 2nd step, 3rd step, 4th step, stopped in front of me, looked at me and said, "You're going to be up." I'm like, dude, I haven't even played a single game, right? I mean, like even warming up, I haven't even warmed up, right? But okay, fine. I've now been subbed with the best player, right, in my team. Great. So I was like hoping, okay, in the next 2 minutes, I just want to make sure the ball doesn't get passed to me, right? Just try to kind of hide or try to avoid a little bit, Then what happened was that, okay, 1.5 minutes left, and then the ball was passed to me, right? Unfortunately. And immediately, like the opponent came and fouled me. I'm like, what? What do you do that for, right? Great. Free throw line, right? I took the first free throw, I missed it. Second free throw, I missed it. The opponent got the ball, ran up, did a layup, 2 points. We were left with 1 point, right? So we had a 1-point lead, and it was 30 seconds left, right? That was on the clock. So I said, okay, as long as we can just hold the ball for 30 seconds, and it's 24 seconds, right? That you can hold the ball. So it was kind of almost close to like 10 seconds left, and then somehow the ball came to my hand again, right? And then the opponents knew that, okay, this guy's the weakest link, right? Foul this guy again. Okay, great, foul me. I step up on the free throw line, and I took the first shot, and I missed. All right, so I thought, okay, if I get this shot in, at least we've got a pretty good chance, right, to just hold the lead. I took the second shot, and I missed. Opponent got the ball, ran up, did a layup, and we lost the game, right? So think about this, right? I mean, so I was 15-year-old, and basketball team, all guys, and we were all like, we it's always like, we talk shit a lot, right? Oh, we have the shit, right? The basketball team. So imagine this bunch of guys. Now just looking at me and like, we were fine 2 minutes ago, and now we are out of the competition, right? Because of, this guy who just like didn't even score a single point, right? So I think that experience when I was 15 years old was pretty traumatic, right? I didn't have like, nobody wanted to talk to me in the bus, on the way back, to school. And, but it made me realize that, we got to be ready, right? Because the opportunity comes, at any point of time. I wasn't ready. I didn't, practice for the competition. I didn't know that the coach was going to sub me in, right? With 2 minutes left, but I was not ready, right? And that was one of the biggest lessons that I've carried on, throughout the past 10 years as an entrepreneur. So, so when I was, I think, when I was 21 years old, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? And my parents both were educationists. My dad teaches in a university, my mom teaches in a school, and being Asian, I'm not sure how many Asian friends you have, and it's like, it's very Chinese, Asian, you got to be like 100 in math, like 98 is not good enough, and then if you have parents or teachers, you got to get like 110 out of 100 points, right? It's kind of, like education's everything, right? So when I told my parents I'd be an entrepreneur, they didn't understand it at all, right? They don't, and the problem is there's peer pressure from my grandparents, right? Who's like, it's always, it's Chinese families is always about telling their parents, my grandparents, what they're doing, right? So if you say doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, great. If you say entrepreneur, it's like, what is your son doing, right? So I think they had pressure, peer pressure from my uncles and aunties, and then, they didn't really understand what entrepreneurship is, but I want to be an entrepreneur, right? And that's why I joined the Apprentice in Malaysia. Because I noticed in 2006, 2007, my mom was watching TV, right? I was like, great, that's a good opportunity to create a elevator pitch, all right, I'm a TV mom, this is what I'm doing, right? And I thought I'd just be there for one episode, right? And somehow I won the TV show. And then my mom kind of burned DVDs, back then it's like, really popular, 10 DVDs, gave it to my grandmother and it's like, see, my son's on TV, so it means that, he's okay, he's doing something that's legit. So, but after winning the TV show, right, so I got a contract, with one of the, fast-growing entrepreneurial companies, AirAsia, right? So this guy, Tony Fernandez, and it's a good opportunity, right? The job was paying 3 times more than an average salary for a fresh graduate. So my dad and mom said, great, this guy's great, this guy's on his way, he's got a good contract, he's going to be, if he's not going to be an engineer, that's fine, I graduated as an engineer, and he's not going to graduate as an engineer, it's fine, but at least he's got a job, right? So to my parents' despair, I actually rejected the job, and then I sold the car that I won, right? And then, which was about 30,000 US dollars. Sold the car, and then told my parents, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, right? And that was, so the first lesson I learned, right? So when I was 21, is that to be an entrepreneur, you got to be ready to actually lose that perfect job, right? I know some of you guys have got like job opportunities. You guys have great jobs, paying you well, very comfortable. But to be an entrepreneur, you got to be ready to lose the job, yeah? Now, then, over the first year as an entrepreneur, I was building like, it's kind of like offline marketing company, right? So I was matching students with part-time jobs, but it's so very manual, right? So the first year we made 300,000 US dollars of sales, right? We thought, we worked really hard, a team of 10, 15 of us. But when we closed the books, we realized that our profit margins was like 5%, all right? So it's $15,000 split across like, 5 of us, and it was like $3,000 each, right? So I think it was super frustrating, right? And then I realized that, like this business model is not very scalable, right? For us to kind of get more revenue, we got to hire more people, right? More people means like more cost, means like lower profit. And then I started reading up like magazines. How do like entrepreneurs become successful? What do young entrepreneurs across the world do? And then I realized that there were kind of 2 different types of groups of entrepreneurs, right? The first is that, they were from rich families. They took their, they take their family business and get it to the next level in a certain way, right? So maybe kind of diversify the family's business, and they became really successful doing that. The second, they basically leverage on technology, right? And there are very few entrepreneurs, like they're young, like in their 20s, that has been successful without leveraging technology. That's when I realized that I got to be ready to embrace technology, right? I've got to kind of figure out a way to kind of build tech-related companies, right, instead of an offline company. So I think that's the second lesson I learned, when I was 22. So in the past, so in that 2 years, right, from 22 to 24, then we were building different business models. So we didn't have, we didn't have startup accelerators like Lightning Lab. We didn't have like startup weekends. It's just, we had some ideas. We had some developers, right, website programmers. Back then it was more website than mobile. So we're just like building different business models, right? So at the same time, while we were building we were building the technology companies or business models, we were still doing the offline part of a business because that helped to pay the bills, right? So so at one point we found that we had two business models that we thought was quite good. One was in e-commerce and one was in digital advertising, right? And but it was still not making as much money as that offline model, right? Because we were still getting paid quite well for matching students with jobs, helping them with events and so on. So it was only in 2010 that we felt that we got to double down, right, on the technology piece. So maybe some of you guys have a startup and you have a servicing business and you have a product that you want to build. And the servicing part of your business actually makes a lot of money, but it's not very scalable, right? Because you kind of have to service the client instead of building a product that has a clearer model of scaling. So I think the third lesson I learned during that period, it was very difficult, but once you have a clear vision of the product, you got to go double down on the product, right? And to some extent, you've got to it's very difficult, but we had to say no to the offline money because the offline money was really killing the focus of the organization. So that was then, investors were not like, it was very difficult to find investors, right, in like 2008, 2010 in Malaysia. But the tech piece of our business was kind of scaling up, and then we believed in it, and we doubled down there. So when we started to do that, we realized that we didn't have the luxury of the money that was coming from offline. So every month we would just almost break even. So we had to be super lean, super hands-on. Like, I was doing customer service for the Groupon model. I was answering emails. I was like, closing deals. And, it's, I know Dave mentioned like one of hardest, experiences in life. That was my hardest experiences that was the hardest experience in my life, right? Doing everything, end of the month, no money, right? It's like we don't even make a single dollar profit, right? Then I was like, shit, maybe 2007 was much better. At least we made $5,000, right? Or $15,000 divided by $3,000 each. So this was like really bad, right? And then my parents are asking me, hey, what are you doing? This entrepreneurship thing, like, you're still not making money, right? But eventually I think we managed to scale the online research, the online advertising model and the e-commerce model. And one day during my daily routines of checking the emails, customer service emails, I clicked onto the spam email, right? Because there was like a couple of emails that was accumulated in the spam. And so happened that one of the emails was actually this guy called Justin Roberts from Groupon, right? So he emailed me, he emailed us, and he went to spam, and he says, hi, I'm Justin, and we'd like to explore, looking at opportunities in Asia. We'd like to talk to you. So imagine if I didn't check that spam email box, I might still be like freaking checking emails every day right now, right? So I think being hands-on, like being ready to be hands-on is like super important as an entrepreneur, right? As a startup. So so within a week, I found myself walking in the streets of Tokyo. I've never been to Tokyo. Everything's in Japanese. Like nobody speaks English. I had to go to Westin Tokyo to meet like the global CEO, right? To kind of explore the opportunity. So I walked into Westin Tokyo. I sat there, really nervous. Then for a moment, I was thinking, hey, is this an April Fool's joke or what? Like, is this guy going to come or not, right? Because imagine this guy sending me an email saying I'm from Groupon, and I'm like, we're just a small e-commerce company, like, So only then when I was in Tokyo, I started to doubt myself, right? Then somehow that guy came, right? We spoke about it, and I think the reason why we decided to get acquired by Groupon was what I realized is that as a startup, we were not dreaming big enough, right? And I think what lined up, the opportunity that lined up with Groupon, we talked about was how do we make this a household brand name? How do we make this the biggest e-commerce company for Malaysia? So we had 100,000 subscribers, when we were starting up, and the number that we had in mind was 1 million. So I thought, wow, great! If 1 million people are using this, maybe finally my mom can use it, and then she'll actually understand what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, so I thought, okay, great. This is like kills two birds with one stone, right? At least we get some money. We get to scale this business. And it was a good decision, right? So today in Malaysia, we have about 3 million, subscribers. We are like super dominant in e-commerce, and it's been, it's been a great journey, learning journey for myself. So I think that lesson taught me about being ready to dream bigger, right? So we've got ideas. A lot of us have good ideas, but actually our dreams are like kind of too small, right? So I met like 2 New Zealand companies, Kiwi companies in Wellington, actually 3. right? Yesterday and today. So I met Carnival Labs, Trade Me, and also Front, right? So this, and I think what's amazing about these companies is that, like Trade Me is like $1.5 billion, e-commerce company, past 16 years, super successful. Carnival Labs, their founder was just on Fox. They're actually building, a really cool mobile, mobile company, and I think they'll be super successful. So I think dreaming big is like super important. As much as we're hands-on and being very lean, I think that the part on dreaming big is super important. So, so after being acquired by Groupon, for one moment I thought, great, we're in a good place, right? February 2011, London, global leadership meeting. It was a room that's got a similar crowd like this, about similar age group as well. I went in there, and that's when I realized, crap, there's 40 countries that Groupon just acquired. There is 50 companies in Malaysia that was doing the similar model, this whole Groupon clone, that back then, 2011, there's like 1,000 Groupon clones, right, globally. So now instead of just competing for market share within a country, I had to compete for internal resources within Groupon, right? So because if there are $10 million to invest internationally, it would go to 40 countries. So, and it won't be done proportionately, it will be done disproportionately depending on the strength of the team and the success of how the team is, is executing on the business. So I realized that we got to compete really hard, right? You got to be ready to compete really hard, not just like internally, but also externally, both ways. So so in 2011, Malaysia, we worked really hard, and Malaysia became the fastest growing within all the 40 countries. And that unlocked, different opportunities for myself within Groupon. And that's why I've been Groupon for the past 4.5 years. So I was kind of promoted 6 times in that 2 years. I managed, multiple geographies across Asia. So the first geography I managed was Taiwan, right? So I was sent to Taiwan to turn around the business. Yeah, the business was losing $1 million every month. Management just left the company, and then I walked in day one, right? I was given 3 days, right, to kind of move to Taiwan, right? I walked in there, I'm like, okay, there's a team of like 350 people, and I don't speak Mandarin. Everyone speaks Mandarin. I was like, great, how bad? Like, it can't get any worse, right? This is like, can only get better from here. So, and then as I start to, then I had 2 translators, start to do a deep dive in the business, and I realized that the business was set up for failure, right? Because as a tech company, it was like 8 layers, right? So the person at the bottom, all the way to like the leadership team, they need to like talk to 8 people, right? Before they even get anything across. So super inefficient. The people at the bottom didn't know like the company's in trouble. The people on top were just like, I think they didn't know how to actually run this business successfully. So what we had to do, within 2 months, we brought that layer down from 8, from kind of 8 levels down to 3 levels, right? So we kind of flattened the organization, and to do that, we need to fire the leadership team, right? You got to take out the fat, right? Because we were like burning cash, right? And and we needed to kind of break even within 6 months, right? That's the goal that we set for ourselves. So yeah, so we had to do the hardest things first. So I think maybe somewhere along your journey as well, you realize that you may reach certain crossroads where you need to be ready to do the hardest things first. And I think that's like super important. A lot of times like you do the hardest things later, and then the things that you do, you work a lot, you think you're doing things right, but actually you're not doing the right thing, right? So I think doing the right thing first, doing the hardest things first is like super important. So that's what we did in Taiwan, and then within month 7, we made our first profit, right? So we, and then they were growing. Market share was, went from 30% to like 55%. And then I was given the opportunity to manage the Southeast Asia and India business. So when first went to India, India is pretty chaotic, chaotic market, because it's like so many startups, so much investments, and they were raising tons of money, right? So when I first went there, so the Groupon model has 2 different business models. One is in local commerce, which is restaurants, spas, and activity providers, tickets, leisure. The second business model is selling physical goods. But the problem we were facing is with the physical goods business, like a lot of competition was raising money, like Flipkart, Snapdeal, Jabong, Amazon, right? They were just going really big in the goods business. And we knew that we couldn't win, right? And we had to pivot the model. So we, within like 2 days, we discussed, we had like our own little startup weekend, and and I think one thing that I learned from there is that we got to be ready to pivot really fast if you know that you can't win, right, in that space. So we pivoted the India model. Today they're growing 150% year on year. At that point of time, 2 years back, it's a struggling business, right? So it's got great growth now. We have very clear space in the local commerce market. And I think that's one of the learnings I learned in India. And then my CEO decided to play a prank on me, right? So he said, okay, since Joe likes to kind of just take 2 days, 3 days to move to a country, why don't we give him the toughest country to move into, right? Which was Japan and Korea. So Japan and Korea was super tough, right? Because it's it's more mature of an e-commerce country. So like Japan's like $137 billion e-commerce industry. Korea, companies were the mini billion-dollar e-commerce companies, and we were trying to find our space there, right? So the biggest challenge I faced was in Korea. So in Korea, we burned a lot of money. We invested $150 million US, tried to grow the business there. By the time I went there, at the peak, we had like 800 people in the company. By the time I went there, we had 300 people, right? So, just burning a lot of cash, right? And our market share was like 3%, right? So I went in there, I looked at the company, and I knew that we can never win. This organization will fail, right? There's no way we can win in Korea with this company, because if you imagine from 800 people to 300 people, if 500 people left the organization in 6 months, right? The good ones would have left first, right? So the only ones that left in the company is probably the ones that couldn't find a job, right? So, and the CEO that was appointed when I went to the company was the hiring manager. Like he was a recruiter, right? He became the CEO, right? So that's kind of how dire the talent, skill set was, when I went there. So, I within like the first few weeks, I made a pretty risky or bold recommendation to the board to shut down the company, right? And I mean, we have burned like $150 million, right? And I mean, it is tough, right? To go, say that, hey, we accept that we failed, right? And it takes, normally for bigger companies, it takes years for them to kind of accept it. So, I think Walmart as well failed in Korea, but it took them like a couple of years to kind of, make that decision and pull out from the market. So very tough, right? But, I know that as long as we have Korea in the portfolio, our whole APAC business, we will never be able to invest in it, because it's going to just suck up all the cash, right, from the other countries. So so within 6 months, pushing that, that decision forward, then it was accepted. So we shut down our Korean business, right? I think that big lesson was being ready to accept failure, but you got to accept it really fast, right? You can't just kind of delay it and keep burning a hole in your pocket. So within 6 months, we shut down the organization, right? By the same time, within that 6 months, we were also looking for Korean companies to invest in, right? And we found one that was a great investment that we just made at the beginning of this year. So we bought that company, and we shut down the company that that we started. And right now, our position in Korea, we are like number 2, right? And it's a $1.5 billion company, and we bought it at a really good value. So and it's growing like 50-60% year on year. So I think as we were putting the pressure to shut it down, I think we were also being ready to look for new opportunities immediately, and investing in something to retain our presence in a fast-growing market like Korea. So I think that's So I think like if I kind of just do a summary, I think being ready when the opportunity is comes super important, and I think I just kind of covered a lot of it in the examples. Trading off the perfect job, embracing technology, doubling down on vision when you're very certain about the product that you have, being lean and super hands-on, as a startup, when you don't have enough resources, you got to do a lot of things by yourself. Dreaming big, I think is super important, and I find that in New Zealand, a lot of the startups or the companies I've met, I think what's really cool about it is, while New Zealand's like 4.5 million population, like a lot of you guys are thinking of the US market, of the European market, right? Or maybe in the near future, you guys will think of the Southeast Asia market, which is kind of growing really fast as well, which I can talk a little bit about, as I kind of finish up the presentation. Compete really hard. Yeah, I think it's, I get very concerned when startups says that they don't have competition, right? I think that no competition means that, then you just kind of sit back, right? And then you're just in your world of your own, but you don't want to compete, compete against yourself, compete within your own team. Always find competition to compete with, and be aggressive. Do the hardest things first. Pivot the model when you know that you can't win, and if you can't pivot, you just accept failure really fast, right? And find other opportunities to invest in. So I think this kind of like the lessons I've learned, right, in the past 10 years. I thought maybe hopefully it'll be of some value to you guys. And I just kind of finish it off with a little bit about Malaysia. So I think Malaysia is kind of a very interesting spot in the recent 1-2 years. We just had like a little bit of a startup weekend, startup kind of gathering, of entrepreneurs last weekend, and it's kind of surprising that 1,000 people actually turned up to to that conference. We've never seen anything like this in Malaysia before, and a lot of Malaysians, and a lot of them were not Malaysians. So interestingly enough, so one thing that Malaysia I think is quite well positioned is because of the lower cost labor. So our average salaries in Malaysia is about 10 to 12,000 for a fresh graduate, right? I know in New Zealand it's probably about it's about $30,000. Yeah, so it's about 1/3 the cost. So a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs have been using Malaysia as an operational hub for Southeast Asia business, right? So within 8 of the largest Southeast Asian tech companies today, 6 of them are in Malaysia, right? So they leverage on the people, whether it's mobile developers, tech. Because so in New Zealand, if you can hire 5 people in New Zealand, you can hire like 15, 20 people, right, in Malaysia. So that's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs from Germany, from US, they've been coming down to Malaysia to do, right, and build the Southeast Asian focused companies. And then at the same time, they leverage a hub like Singapore to do fundraising, right? So with Singapore, I think just in the past 2-3 years, there's got a lot of VC, a lot of venture capital firms have sprouted out. If I'm not mistaken, there's like 30-40 of them today. So a lot of Japanese companies, Chinese companies, even US companies, Go to Gate Ventures. They're all like kind of building up funds to invest within South Asia from Singapore. So I think if I'm sure you guys have a lot of good ideas that you want to build global business models. But if you happen to have a business model that's kind of relevant for Southeast Asia, Singapore and Malaysia is quite a good combination. To kind of explore, your entrepreneurship ideas. And, if you have any thoughts, happy to talk more after this. All right, thanks. Yeah, let's skip this.